listened to them break down Eric's first year in WWE? Now hang out with us. This is After 83 Weeks with Christy Olson. That's me.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
I know you know and love this one.
I love this theme.
Yeah.
Such a good theme.
Just let it roll for a minute. Hello, everybody, and welcome to After 83 Weeks. We're coming at you live on YouTube. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. You guys are already chatting about 3-minute warning and a little action we called HLA. We are going to get to all of that because this week on 83 Weeks, Eric Bischoff and Conrad talked about his first year in WWE. Follow up to last week's where they only got to his debut.
Just the opening night. Just the debut.
Just the debut. This is the show for all of you 83 Weeks fans out there to come after the show. We talk about the big reveals. We get your guys' reactions. You guys are already chatting away. We love that. And of course, we're, the first ever podcast about a podcast, which is pretty cool. And let me introduce this man right here next to me before I tell you who else has taken notice of our podcast about a podcast.
Oh.
Yes, you, sir. You are my tried and true. You are my ride or die. You are my... I wish I could think of more cutesy words for you, but I feel like
I'm your 3-minute warning.
You are my 3-minute warning.
I'm your 3-minute warning.
Christian
I'm Rosie and Jamal.
Rosenberg.
What's up?
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I'm Rosie.
You are
I'm Rosie.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm great to be here as always. I got more space around the desk this week because it's just me and you.
I know. Everybody's hauled off already for the, whatever holiday or something.
It's all right. I'm thankful to be here to talk about this one because this might have been, since we've done this show, this might have been my favorite podcast, my favorite episode.
Oh, well then I'm glad you're the only one here to talk about it then.
So I can talk a lot.
That's great. That's great. Well, I can't wait to hear what it was that that spoke to you so loudly. But, someone spoke to me on Saturday night.
Who? Ooh, wait, it was Saturday night. Like, was like candles lit?
That did sound kind of...
I know, on Saturday night.
Kind of sexy, didn't it?
Saturday night, someone spoke to me.
Okay, it really wasn't that hot. It was just a tweet.
Oh.
It was a tweet.
I was about to ask if Blue Chew was involved.
But, okay, no, I better... Okay, we are keeping it clean because Eric Bischoff tweeted at me on Saturday, and he just said simply, Christy, we need to talk.
Ooh.
And my immediate reaction was like, I'm pretty sure we're following each other. I'll DM him. After posting a sassy GIF reply. And after posting the sassy GIF reply, I realized that it's 83 Weeks that's following me and not Eric Bischoff, of course, because why would he follow me? And I can't DM him, so... And he has not responded to my cutesy GIF of Alexa Bliss putting her hands up as if to say, I did nothing wrong and running away. So I will have to keep you posted on what it is that Eric Bischoff wants with us here at After 83 Weeks.
They need to talk. Oh, there's so many possibilities.
I know. Do you think we ticked him off?
We could have upset him. He could just be mad at George for calling BS on stuff in the past.
It's probably
he could just be wanting to find a way to get in contact with me because he's such a fan.
Oh, that makes sense.
He might want a deal on my T-shirts, which everyone can get during Black Friday sale at prowrestlingtees.com/Christian Rosenberg.
I knew we were going to get that in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, and there's more plugs to come. I don't know, but I'm very intrigued on what he needs to talk to you about. Are you nervous?
Not really, but I feel like it is very old school wrestling-y guy to do that and then leave me hanging, right? He's effing with me, right?
I don't know.
I guess we will find out.
I'm not Eric Bischoff, so I don't know what he's thinking. He's got a lot of thoughts going in his mind.
He does.
A lot of them very good, some meh. But so I don't know which area it is with you right now.
Well, I will keep you all posted on that.
Yes.
But we did get about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes, something of his thoughts on this week's episode. As I mentioned last week, they intended to cover his entire first year, but only got up to that big debut.
Got to about 11:05 p.m. that Monday night.
that first Monday night.
Yes.
Well, we're jumping right in here to it's the storyline going where who can land Hunter on their brand. Bischoff is, of course, a GM, and he talks a lot in this episode about his working closely with Stephanie. Another thing we touched on a little bit last week. Hey, girl. But we got a little more juicy tidbits, and something interesting that he had to say, too, was not just about Stephanie, but was about Hunter. Of course, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Mr. Triple H, who Eric Bischoff said was okay. He described Triple H as just being okay. He's good, he's solid, but he's just okay. What did you think about that?
It's interesting because a lot of people feel that way. From my understanding, from like a lot of critics, because everyone talks about, the incredible charisma of the Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Steve Austin, Rock, Hogan, etc. Where Triple H, the longevity and the championship reigns, I mean, obviously, he's in that conversation with all those grades. Mm-hmm. But so many people do not bring him up in that conversation because it's like, yeah, he's really good. He has some great matches. He can certainly cut promos. But for some reason, and I don't know what it is, but there are a number of people that just don't have him on that same level as Shawn Michaels, as Ric Flair, etc. And I mean, I think a big part of that is longevity, which, I mean...
He's just not at the end of his career yet. Not anywhere close.
Well, I mean, as far as in-ring career, he's still wrestling, obviously very little compared to how he used to.
Yeah.
Because there's this thing called age and his other job. But I mean, he should be in the conversation with those people based on what he has done between DX, Evolution, and what he's doing now with NXT. So
that's probably his biggest contribution.
Yeah, and he's the type of guy that would say that's his biggest contribution is NXT.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
do you think is it the stigma? Is it the same thing that women in this business have been dealing with for decades? It's he's with Stephanie, so he must have gotten some of the things that he has because he's with Stephany.
I'm sure that's part of it. Mm-hmm. I mean,
but that's just kind of nagging in the back of people's minds.
Yeah, that's almost to the same extent as, I mean, Charlotte Flair always said, oh, well, her father's Ric Flair, so that's why she's getting the opportunities. Where obviously we know she works her ass off, and but there's always going to be some people that be like, well, she wouldn't have got to that point if Rick didn't do that part for her. But so I'm sure, Triple H wouldn't have had this if Stephanie didn't do that. That's always going to be there. Mm-hmm. And is it justified? For the most part, no.
Right.
But it's there.
It is there. And you know what else is there? All you AfterBuzzers out there.
They're all out there, everywhere.
All out there. We love every single one of you. Talk to the people, Rosie.
I can talk to them?
I
can talk to all of you? Well, let me do that. Hey, AfterBuzzers. Our network produces after shows for nearly all your favorite TV shows, from dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more. There is no network that works harder to serve television fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made for you, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about the pesky notifications, don't. They're optional. So hit that subscribe button now for this channel, and check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well, and let us know you did in the comments, and we're going to thank you on there and give you shout-outs, just like Chris is about to shout out people in the chat roll, give some shout-outs.
Like Demo, like Star Drew, like Christy Reports. Hey, girl.
Oh, hey, Christy Reports in the chat roll. So, more of those to come, but for now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV talk.
Yeah, thank you guys. And those of you that I just shouted out here, you guys are chatting up a storm. Demo said that, maybe Triple H gets overlooked because, I'm going to have to find it again, but I know she mentioned guys like Steve Austin, Stone Cold, and The Rock.
Well, because he came up at the same time, right, where Michaels was there, Rock was there, Austin was there, Undertaker was there. There are others that are still in my mind at the moment. But yeah, so it's almost kind of like, oh, he was the other guy there, but he's actually, when you really want to think about it, from the wrestling standpoint, has done more than those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Austin sold more merchandise. Rock has had more mainstream success. As far as wrestling, Triple H has done more.
Right. Absolutely. Well, the chat roll also thinks that Eric Bischoff maybe just wants to tell us how much he enjoys our post show.
That's a possibility too. He just might want to be like, oh, Chrissy, glad we got to talk. Keep up the good work. Bye.
Well, yeah, Eric Bischoff also reveals that Hunter wasn't really part of the inner circle. And when he started saying this, I thought that he was implying that Hunter was not accepted by the boys. But really what he meant was that Hunter kind of stayed out of that hoopla.
Stayed out of trouble.
Yeah, that he meant it more as a compliment.
Yeah, no,
did you get that?
I agree, and I think and I think that can be really said because this is how Triple H was really prior to going to WWE when he was with Bischoff and WCW. And then he comes to WWE. There's the whole Click story where he was the one who got punished, even though he didn't necessarily do the most wrong or anything like that. But all of a sudden, he started hanging out with those people, and oh, look what happened to him. So he probably, when he left WCW, went to WWE, he was like, I should have just acted like I did in WCW. None of this would happen. But obviously, in the long run, he's probably glad it happened because the rest is history.
The rest is history until we fast forward about 3 minutes in. Yes, that's right. We are going to talk about 3-minute warning.
Did someone just say 3 minutes? That would have been a great cue for the theme if I let Steve, our engineer,
if we had told him
if
ahead of
I
time.
had told him ahead of time and I failed to do so. It's all good, though. I didn't tell him that.
He's busy pulling up all this great B-roll. You guys, if
Steve's
you join
amazing.
us live on YouTube, you can also see what we are actually talking about, which is pretty darn cool, and which is 3-minute warning. So Bischoff says, listen, no one asked for his thoughts on creative, and he doesn't really know where this came from or why. He was just really there to conduct himself how he wanted his talent to conduct themselves at WCW. He wasn't going to ask a lot of questions. But he was excited about this 3-minute warning thing. He also says he never even knew whose idea the Chuck and Billy wedding was. It's hard for me to believe that someone like Eric Bischoff could take such a backseat role. I know he was just there to be talent, but don't you think that would have been incredibly difficult for him?
Probably at first. I mean, you have to welcome it. I mean, I've personally been a similar, obviously not to that grand scale that Bischoff went from running WCW to being a talent in WWE, but I know there are times where I was one of the main people booking and writing those storylines for an independent wrestling company, and then all of a sudden, I started working for another company where that one they were just going to tell me what to do, and part of me, just a natural part of me, wanted to jump in. I was like, oh, well, this guy, what if you do this and that? But oh wait, I'm not supposed to say that right now because that's not my role. And they'll get annoyed at me because I'm not. Right. They didn't hire me to do that. So I get what he's saying, and there are certainly times where it can be tough, and there are certain times where it's very refreshing. It almost feels like you're on a vacation, even though you're still working. If that makes any sense.
That's pretty much exactly how he described it as well. Well, he kind of there's a lot of little tidbits in this episode, stuff like he didn't have Vince in his ear when he was commentating, which that shocked me. I know, whatever. Anyway,
you know what, Christy?
I don't know anything, people. Okay, I don't know anything. He dropped a little bit of details about Keven Dunn. Is that something that you're interested in? Those behind the scenes guys. Do you want to know more about them?
Some of them, Keven Dunn. I have very limited knowledge of Keven Dunn. I know he's been Vince's number 2 guy forever. And he probably will not go anywhere until Vince decides to go anywhere. Never. Never. I've heard all different stories, good and bad, but I've never really heard anything about like an outgoing type of personality, which is pretty much what Bischoff kind of affirmed. It's just like, very just straight to the point, do the job, boom, 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 boom. And that's pretty much, as far as any stories that I've never met him. So I have no relationship or anything really to back it up on. But
some people work there for a year and never meet him.
Like who?
I don't know.
Oh, all right. Oh, no, that name must be up in the cloud somewhere. But
good one.
Still got it. But no, Keven Dunn, I mean, it'd be interesting. I would like one day maybe if he actually did, not necessarily a podcast, but like, a real sit-down interview with Conrad or somebody, that I would be very interested in that. But otherwise, meh.
Right, and unfortunately, that'll never happen anyway.
Right, we know
right.
that.
Well, another behind-the-scenes guy who is not involved in wrestling is Mark Burnett. For those of you who are not familiar with that name, this guy is a Mondo TV producer. He's the guy behind Survivor and about a million other
Lucha Underground, too.
Reality shows. Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. So I guess I could have told you guys that, and then you would know who I'm talking about.
Well, he's best known for Survivor.
Right.
I mean,
of course.
That's kind of...
outside of...
That show's done pretty well.
The wrestling world. Yeah, I feel like, it's been on a few seasons. Yeah. And he apparently was in some talks with Eric Bischoff to do kind of a martial arts show. It was like Enter the Dragon, Mortal Kombat style, but they just couldn't find a network home for it. This story wasn't particularly juicy, but it did get Bischoff talking about his experience with karate and his
and he was on ESPN.
How he competed in martial arts. Yeah, actually in the 80s, he actually had a few, do they call them matches? Pardon me for not knowing.
Fights? I think they just go by fights.
Fights? Yeah, so he even had a few on ESPN. This was with a promotion called PKA, and I liked hearing about this. It was something that wasn't about Eric's 1 year of his career while he worked in wrestling or something, kind of some personal stuff.
Yeah, I mean I've known that he had all the martial arts experience, and I knew that he competed. I didn't know it was to this extent, especially when he had some fights that were nationally televised.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And he wanted to talk about it. He wanted to tell everybody
it's like,
about
all right, well, if we're going to talk about it, well, let's talk about, it's not that big a deal, but yeah, I was on ESPN twice, and I did.
Yeah, it was kind of cute. This is not someone who gets to brag about his physical prowess.
Right.
Even though he's worked with athletes for how many years. So that was cool to hear. I appreciated that. And then, of course, we go right from martial arts into kissing the boss's wife, because that's just the kind of life that people lead in professional wrestling.
That's the world of wrestling.
This was another one where he says he doesn't know where the idea came from, but he assumes it was Vince's idea, because who the hell else would suggest that he kiss Vince's wife besides Vince himself? What came out here, and this is something that I immediately was like, can't wait to ask Rosenberg about this one.
Uh-oh.
He talked about these bizarre Vince McMahon stories. Oh, people have heard about these bizarre stories, these proclivities that he has, whatever, which is, the stories are probably all BS anyway. But I've never heard anything like that. Is that a predominant?
Really?
No.
Oh, they're rampant. Oh, so many crazy stories. There's so many things that have been turned down that he's wanted. He's tried to pitch incest angles multiple times.
Okay, so that's what people are talking about.
That's one.
Okay, it's not like a personal story of like, I saw him one time at the strip club with this. It's not like that.
No, they're the ideas for
okay.
Like, what if we have this guy pull this out of his ass?
I'm so glad we straightened this out.
Yeah.
I was like, thought they were trying to imply that there was some kind of deviancy here. I did not know what the implication was.
I mean, I'm glad you straightened it out. I'm sure there's some of that too, but. But I don't think that's what he was referencing.
Right. Okay. Well, Vince liked to take people out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Because he believed that it made for good TV. I liked that Eric brought that up, because that seems to be a really good explanation for a lot of stuff that goes down in WWE, right?
Yeah.
We'll just chalk it up to that. And Eric Bischoff did take things as far as he could at points. He talked last week about really sticking to the script. He told a story this week about talking about Stephanie's peaches on the air, and that she was really kind of up for anything, and that she and then he makes these comments. I thought this was what the tweet was about when Bischoff tweeted me, because that was the week that I said, like, oh, when he talks about women, he only brings up who they're sleeping with. Like, why is that relevant to the story? And this part was he dropped a couple lines about he was going to add her to the list with the fat chick. It was just very attitude era language that happened at this point in the show.
Well, the fat chick. I mean, he's referencing like NWO Sold Out. He had to make out with an NWO girl who was a very large woman, and he willingly did it. And then there's Stephanie, there's Linda.
You can't refer to someone as the fat chick.
The overweight person.
Yes, I wish he would have said that instead.
Okay.
No, I just have to do my little crusade.
I'm a fat person. I mean, I'll admit it. I'm not uncomfortable with it.
I'm pretty sure no one would call you the fat chick.
Well,
Christian Rosenberg.
If I had a wig on.
All right, well, let's talk about some hot chicks.
Yes.
Let's talk about him. Because, you know, they gave Triple H the belt, but that's whatever. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, he won that a lot.
Yeah. That time he's just giving it, but it's fine. Hot lesbian action. Okay, guys, this is...
Why don't you break this one down, Christy?
Yeah, why don't we talk about this? This was an era in wrestling where, I think I mentioned this last week, like, feminist crusader Christy at this age was like, had a problem with some of this stuff.
So Feminist Crusader did not enjoy hot lesbian action?
No.
Oh,
no.
Interesting.
And I can't honestly say that I had ever watched it before this week.
The B-roll is showing the clip from it right now.
Yeah, and I even questioned whether to give the B-roll to...
Jerry Lawler with the binoculars.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Show it. I mean,
it's funny.
It's funny right now.
Yes.
But when we get towards the end of this, it's difficult to watch.
Oh, sure.
It is not like anything that you have seen on TV since or ever will ever again. And I hate to judge it now or even talk about it now. I mean, in the context of the show, that's not the point. We're going to discuss what Eric Bischoff had to say about it. But it's difficult to discuss something like this in this day and age where people's acceptance of this would be very different than it was back then.
And for people that are just watching because they're seeing it's not on the B-roll footage yet, but you're referencing when 3-minute warning come out. Mm-hmm. and literally beat the crap out of the women
as they're
in their underwear,
thong ridden. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
and it did create some controversy back in the day. And even Eric Bischoff said he thinks this crossed the line, but the line that it crossed, that in his mind, is when they got beat up later, which we're getting to right now.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Well,
that was what he thought
that was the area
that
he thought was crossing the line. And it's amazing. I mean, when you really think about it, 15 years is not that long of a period of time, mm-hmm. but where we've gone, we were at this stuff, and from here, we're at now with the women's revolution, with all the women just kicking everyone's butts and main eventing pay-per-views and everything like that. Just the difference of where we've come. Mm-hmm. And it's just so interesting because it wasn't that long ago where this was a thing. And this was a thing that was cheered. This was the only
thing for the women.
Yeah, because Bischoff literally mentions on the podcast, he said, nobody watches women's wrestling. Because that was the case. I mean, I can tell you, at this time, I was 20, 21 years old. Yeah, I enjoyed this segment for, as a young collegiate guy, for the reasons that probably all males that watched this segment did.
Of course.
But, looking back now as a 35-year-old child, because that's still what I am. You look back and just like, this really happened? And it's still interesting because on the independent scene, there are intergender matches.
Yeah.
Men wrestle women all the time. And
I love intergender wrestling.
And they do move, like, men do moves to women, more, like, maybe even more vicious than what these clips were. Mm-hmm. But obviously the women are these women were wrestlers.
Yeah.
But these women that I'm referencing in the intergender match are we're wrestling.
Right.
And
that's the distinction.
I mean, that's really the distinction. These were wrestlers. Those women are wrestling.
Right.
I mean, the best way, look up any type of video of Brian Cage, like the Beast. He's, Google him if you have not heard of him. He's one of the strongest wrestlers known to mankind. And Tessa Blanchard.
Oh, from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was there.
You were there at Bar Wrestling. They also wrestled a couple other times that they're on, whether it's Fight TV or YouTube or anything like that.
Yeah.
And what Brian Cage does to Tessa, but the fact that Tessa comes back and does the same stuff to Brian Cage, it just shows where women's wrestling is a great example of it.
And then the next night she went and had the longest iron match ever with Mercedes Martinez, I'm pretty sure. Or no,
yeah, it was
a couple days later.
Yeah, soon after that. So it's just like I don't want to keep overusing the word evolution because obviously that's a very played word lately.
Actually, I feel like we haven't heard it in a couple weeks.
Well, in the world of wrestling, the world evolution has been, but it really has been, mm-hmm. and I do find it interesting how Bischoff now looking back is saying this. I'm just really curious if he 100% felt that way on that day in 2003. Because 20-year-old me didn't.
Yeah.
you know, so I'm sure. I mean, he's probably like 21 or something because I want to make sure he's watching and likes me too. But I don't know whether or not he felt the same exact way. And obviously, it's going to be so hard to tell because it's so many years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, he talks not only about that controversial angle, but of course about Chuck and Billy's wedding too. He got into sort of a little bit of a not such an exciting story about getting fitted for the mask.
I love the story.
Oh, you did?
I love this.
Oh.
The Billy and Chuck wedding is probably one of my, I do the SmackDown AfterBuzz show, and SmackDown recently had their 1,000th episode. This is probably one of my like top maybe 5 favorite SmackDown moments ever.
Yeah.
Was this wedding. Because I remember all the buildup for it, and I remember listening. I'm not really personally a big Howard Stern fan, but I listened to Howard Stern when they talked about this and they promoted this, and it was on all the news outlets. Like, you have to tune in to this week's SmackDown for it. Obviously, I'm knowing. Okay, well, they're not really going to get married, so what's going to happen? Something's got to happen. I was tuning into it.
Savvy wrestling fan.
And, but the biggest thing that I remember, besides obviously the Bischoff reveal, was Bischoff's character like shaking and laughing in the mask. And I love the fact that he talks about all of that in this story, and the depths that they had to go back and forth to get the mask and the prosthetics to look right, and him testing it on who he took it after, and I remember like when he started saying the line to talk about like, 30 years, 16 months, or 3 minutes. As soon as he said 3 minutes in like the old voice, I remember this being at home watching, and like 3 minutes was just like, what? As soon and then he goes back into his regular voice. He's like, wait a minute. I'm just like, oh my God, that's Bischoff. Like, because I mean, I could tell that it was someone wearing makeup.
Yeah.
But I had no idea who. And all of a sudden, and then, like how he described it, when Rosie and Jamal came out, laid waste to everyone, including Stephanie, and Bischoff like holding her at first, watching and beat down Billy and Chuck and Rico, and it was so well done and so surprising. I mean, Bischoff talked about on the podcast how like he felt the gasp, from the crowd.
Took the wind out of them.
Took the wind out of the crowd. I mean, he might have felt it from people watching at home, because I know I gasped because it was so good and so unexpected, and I loved hearing this side of it. Like I want to hear. All right, I hear Bischoff's side. I want to hear Stephanie's side of this. I want to hear Billy's side of this. I want to hear Chuck's side of this. I want to hear Rico's side of this.
You want there to be a whole podcast series just about the wedding.
I think it also threw me out because it was one of the first times that I remember that like a wrestler actually had a what do you call the microphones that are just like on the
like
shirt?
a lavalier?
Thank you, like a lavalier, because Rico had one, and he's like, go on, Chuck, say it. I'm just like, he's not holding a microphone. Wrestlers never do this.
I love that you remember this.
I remember that. No, I told you this is one of
play-by-play.
my favorite moments. I have my Christian's Closet segment every week on SmackDown AfterBuzz that uses the Billy and Chuck theme. There it is, right there.
That one he's ready for.
Steve engineers our AfterBuzz SmackDown, so I think he was just waiting for me to bring it up.
That was good.
It's because like it was just such a unique team, a unique story, and an incredible moment, and I'm glad Bischoff talked about it.
Now that you hear him explain that he was going for like Jim Barnett, does that make sense to you now?
Yeah.
Like, did you go, oh?
Like, that makes sense. I know Jim Barnett's voice, and he was trying to almost sound like it.
Well, this caused a lot of mainstream backlash.
Yes.
And that included sort of the HLA and 3-minute warning and everything that was going down in WWE at this point. And Bischoff said the wedding wasn't demeaning and he doesn't give a F. Was kind of how he wrapped up this part of the discussion.
And he's right. I mean, and he would be the one to say, okay, well, whether they're saying good things or bad things, they're talking about you. And that's what's important. Mainstream media is talking about SmackDown.
Right.
They're talking about WWE. They're talking about how are they going to respond that Monday on Raw. So it's a win.
Yeah. It's a win-win-win. We move on to another angle. Eric talks about taking the stink face from Rikishi, from a disguised at first Rikishi, right?
Oh, actually, real quick. It's before you get in. It dawned on me because I have a what I find to be like a funny Rosie and Jamal story.
Oh, please tell.
If I may share.
Yeah.
Well, that I found funny. So this was actually. So it was after, like, 3-minute warning was past its big hype. Mm-hmm. So this was the point actually Jamal was released before he came back as Umaga.
Okay.
And Rosie, before he teamed up, he eventually became the superhero in training, the SHIT, with the Hurricane. But before that, he was still Rosie of 3-minute warning, but he was by himself. And it really made no sense.
Yeah.
So I remember I went to trying to think. So I was home on a break from college, and my brother and I went to a WWE live event in Hartford, Connecticut. And there was the only match I remember from this show was a match that made no sense. So it was a tag team match. It was the Hurricane teaming with Tommy Dreamer, which is an interesting team, versus the team of Rosie and Lance Storm.
Woo-woo.
Again, no reason for these guys to be paired up. There's no story whatsoever. And this was like within the week that Jamal was released. Mm-hmm. And at this time is when I was first discovering dirt sheets and all that stuff.
A magical time.
Yeah, Chrissy loves dirt sheets. I despise them now. But when I was young and first discovered them, I'm like, these are so cool. And I'm around ringside, and the entire match, I am yelling at Rosie, making fun of him that Jamal got fired because I'm a terrible person. And I just remember, like, so I'm heckling him like everyone should not do. And the match ends. Rosie's on the outside of the ring. He's on the floor. Hurricane and Dreamer won the match. And then I yell at Rosie. I said, now go in the back and find Jamal and stay with him. And he does one of these slow looks. Uh-oh. And just gives me the look of death. Gets up to his feet.
Uh-oh.
And starts walking towards me. Lance Storm, a.k.a. my knight in shining armor, runs over to Rosie and starts, like, turning them around, like, let's go, let's head to the back. Because Rosie was going to murder me. And, like, it took until, like, about a minute after they were gone where it dawned on me, which was like, he was going to punch me in the face. I was going to get my ass kicked by Rosie because I couldn't keep my big mouth shut. And Lance Storm was my Spider-Man. And I'm eternally thankful for Lance Storm for that day.
That is one of my favorite stories you have ever told. And you got some good ones. That was a good one.
Yes. I have never heckled anyone since. I just want you to know.
I love it. Well, maybe you deserved a stink face.
I did. For that I definitely deserved a stink face.
And maybe you would question yourself too, as Eric Bischoff did. He was like, are they trying to just demean me? But then he remembered. He remembered that the McMahons aren't afraid to embarrass themselves on camera. And he remembers a little something that one Hulk Hogan told him a long time ago about Vince. Brother. He said, Vince will not ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. And that's something that we've heard resounding over and over about Vince.
And yeah, from every story we hear about Vince and in the crazy things that we've seen people do, we know that's why they do it, because they know that Vince would do it.
Right.
If Vince would not. I mean, Vince had himself get blown up in a car once. So we know he's willing to do anything.
Right. He's willing to give up his daughter's lips to one Eric Bischoff
Multiple times.
And he talks a lot about how that storyline just got dropped. And it sounds like he was pretty disappointed about that.
I remember that because I remember watching them, like, they're making out. Stephanie's kind of liking it. And then we never heard from it again. And it was just like, what was this supposed to lead to? Like, was this supposed to, maybe they're actually going to reach some type of partnership / quasi-relationship, and both of them are running both shows together, but maybe it's one plan of the other to get in the heart and then secretly take over the other one. It could have been, but we don't know. We don't know.
Even just now when you said was so invested. I'm like, what? And then what happened?
Yeah, because like that could have been like Stephanie's plan, and all of a sudden she's taking over both shows, and Bischoff is powerless, but we'll never know.
Well, either way, Bischoff didn't ask Lori, the Mrs. Bischoff, if it's okay for him to be making out with everybody.
If he's being filmed at work,
you think it's okay?
I think it's okay.
All right.
Now,
to Rosenberg's future wife, make out with whoever you want. Just keep it on camera.
As long as we see it on TV, as long as I don't find out later on that you rehearsed for several hours prior, we're fine.
Oh, I love this. The chat roll's already looking forward to next week. They want to shout out to Lance for saving you because they love you.
Let people tweet Landstorm thanks from me for that time. I'm sure he does not remember that, but yeah.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah,
You never know. Eric Bischoff also says he was not excited for Elimination Chamber. I found this very interesting. He says it didn't resonate with him, although it did with the audience, but because he's always coming from producer standpoint, from running the show, and he says he just saw this big ugly cage, and how are you going to shoot people in there and film?
Yes, we know what you mean.
It was problematic according to him.
Yeah, and I understand that because I remember watching the first one and realizing like, oh, it's kind of tough to see things.
Yeah,
and I get it because it's a thicker chain than the classic steel cage. You have more of the thicker bands in between. It's covered on the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely harder to get the cameras in. For a live crowd, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. But definitely at first, it was tough for them. I mean, they've since figured out the good ways to record it.
Right.
But it was definitely a gamble at first. It's worked because they still do it. There's a pay-per-view early next year solely behind that.
Did you see the Elimination Chamber, like the actual structure at Access?
Yes, I've been inside it. Yeah, well, I'm sure you have too.
I was busy working.
Oh. She was busy working. I was busy being a tourist.
Did you get crazy on vacation as a tourist and show your boobies? I was just trying to look for a Girls Gone Wild segue. I don't know.
Yes.
Let's talk about Joe Francis.
That wasn't an actual question to me? Oh, all right.
You do another story? Another story time?
I don't know. We didn't need to talk about Christian's booby stories anytime soon.
Well, I'm sure those of us who are of a certain age remember how huge Girls Gone Wild was. And Eric Bischoff says he had a friendship going with Joe Francis, who was the guy. Joe Francis was the man.
Which is
in the
crazy.
early 2000s.
It's crazy to look back and be like, this was the guy?
Yeah. He was the guy. And especially just since how far he's fallen since then. But
is he in prison right now? I don't even know where he is right now. He was in jail. Is he still in jail?
I forgot that he existed. I was following all that for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, you're the queen of the gossip and all that. You should know more than I do.
I forgot about him. All right, to be determined.
Okay.
I'll keep you all posted.
Chat roll. Where is Joe Francis?
Yeah, chat roll, please. You guys are the best. They would have liked to have RVD win that.
Oh, win that chamber match.
Yeah.
Well, he was busy breaking Triple H's trachea.
Which happens every great once in a while. And another thing that almost happened, or maybe at least Vince McMahon was interested in buying Playboy at the same time that Joe Francis was. Eric Bischoff is getting his hands in the pot. They're talking about maybe doing a Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view. This seems like it really, at this point in time, would have been a match made in heaven. WWE and Girls Gone Wild.
And WWE and Playboy. I
Absolutely.
mean, they had so many of the girls in it. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect match. I mean, I almost feel like Vince McMahon should still be trying to buy it today.
Yeah.
But since they're so PG now, they won't.
Well, yeah, now it doesn't come with the mansion anymore, so, But Eric Bischoff did not really address what happened with that idea or where it went or why it fell dead in the water. I didn't miss something, right?
No, it just kind of faded away.
Yeah, this was one of those burning questions that I'll have should he tweet me again. I have a list. And I will
tweet
keep that
her back. Tweet her back, Eric. Or you can tweet me. Hi, I'm at Real Rosenberg. Nice to talk to you.
It would be. Well, he had a little talk with one Bruce Pritchard, who asked if he wouldn't mind working with Steve Austin, and Eric Bischoff said, "Sure, why not?" Apparently, they had a little beef from back in the day when he kind of
fired him
Steve
via
by
FedEx.
But this was really a beautiful story. He got to the point where he says, they filmed these promos. Steve Austin was into it. He said from the beginning, hey, let's be friends, buddies, whatever. They got to the point of this match at No Way Out. And Eric Bischoff describes very candidly being concerned that he was going to hurt Steve Austin. He also says he saw Steve Austin's leg tremoring before the match. In a very sort of, he describes this dramatic scene where they're backstage and Steve Austin's leg is shaking and they're having this conversation, and Eric Bischoff just so wanted to make Steve Austin look good, but he was scared. This seemed very real to me. This was.
I mean, I don't know how true as far as like the leg tremor part was, but yeah, Austin was definitely hurt at this point. I mean, that's part of the reason why he walked out. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he was not the same Steve Austin. And obviously, when you're in the ring with someone where like one bad move, could completely. I mean, one bad move typically would severely hurt someone. Mm-hmm. But when someone's already in that condition, that could be, really, life-changing, catastrophic.
Yeah.
And being that Bischoff's not a wrestler. He's very, really, worried about that. And I can understand. I mean,
that is when people get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing like I've had, I hate that I'm like comparing myself to what Bischoff's done, because obviously it's such a minute comparison, since he's done things far, 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 far bigger than me.
And I didn't do your fancy intro at the beginning, so people don't know that you've been in the wrestling business for over 13 years as a personality, commentator, and evil general manager. He's done it all, folks.
And I have taken my share of bumps and gotten hurt as well. And there have been a number of stories where, the bookers in charge are like, well, what if you do this match with this guy? And it's like, I don't know if I should, because I'm not training that. I'm gonna be worried for his safety, because I don't want to accidentally, especially, when it's someone, I was approached once with someone who, he was, in the latter stages of his career. He, was limping all around in the back just from age and all the bumps they were taking all the time. And like brace after brace on his knee, and they're like, oh, what if you do this thing with him? And like, I should not do that, because I don't want to accidentally do something. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, so I didn't end up doing it. So I totally get what Eric was saying, and the fact that they made the adjustment of like, you're just gonna beat the hell out of me, and I'm really not gonna do anything to you. Mm-hmm. And it worked. Everyone enjoyed it.
They absolutely did. One beatdown, however, that we didn't see on camera is this much, much talked about backstage altercation. Well, I don't know if we'd call it an altercation so much as an attempted beatdown by Ric Flair to Bischoff. We've heard this story, at least from Ric Flair, quite a while ago in his book, after everyone, being sworn to silence or whatever. He got his side of the story out there. Bischoff has touched on this at different points, but we finally got a play-by-play from him. A few of the highlights. He says that none of the stuff that Ric Flair's account really was true, and that Eric Bischoff did not get hurt. He barely even got hit or touched.
Yeah, he said he wasn't touched.
Yeah. And also, which I thought was interesting, that he lost a lot of respect for Arn Anderson that day, that the whole thing was just weird and left him confused. What stood out to you the most in his account of the story?
I would say that the confused part, just because, I mean, kind of like how we touched on it a few weeks ago when he talked about, him and I, we just suddenly had a beer and laughed about it. We never really, talked about our issues or hashed it out. It just, so like at this time, it's like, you guys never talked about this? Because this sounds like, I mean, whether Rick was true, Eric was true, or it's a mixture of the two.
It was bad.
It's bad. It's quite bad. So, and I was also kind of surprised. Obviously, I know Arn is like a brother to Rick and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But I am really surprised from Eric's point of view that Arn just stood there and wasn't trying to calm Rick down or get him away from this. So that part kind of surprised me. But again, who knows? Because we've heard two very different sides. So who knows which side? I mean, part of Rick's could be true. Part of Eric's could be true. Neither could be true. Don't know, people. So I mean, I found it interesting, but at the same time, I don't remember if I mentioned it. Oh, yeah, because I think I mentioned it last week when I was talking about, like, things between Eric Bischoff and Jim Ross or whatever. Like, whoever says what, I almost take it with a grain of salt now because they always are, like, opposite ends. It's similar with this.
Yeah. What stood out to me was the end of the story where he goes to Vince's office and I want to say tattle, but I also don't want to get tweeted. So,
I don't think that, honestly, that's a situation I can see people thinking it as a tattle.
Yeah, explain.
I would not consider that a tattle at all because here's the thing. There's a little children's game that's called telephone where one person will say this and then one person say this and eventually by the time it gets all the way to the end, it's something very different. I'm always the type of person where I like to tell people that, all right, if you like something, great. If you don't like something, that's fine too. Just tell me directly and, have like a good reason why, whatever it is. And then we'll go from there. But then all of a sudden when I hear, like someone comes up to me, oh, Christian, did you hear that? Like this person thinks that you did this and said this. And like, well, no, have them talk to me then because I don't know what's 100% true out of this. So I would want to go, if I was a part of something, I don't want all of a sudden, who was a random wrestler that was at this time? Sean Morley, Val Venus.
Nice.
Because he was brought up a few times in this. I don't want him to suddenly, like maybe have heard through something and happens to walk by Vince in the hallway. Be like, oh, Vince, I don't know. Hey, did you hear that Bischoff knocked one of Ric Flair's teeth out?
Right.
Because that's what it could have turned into. And so, like, I would have been like, if I was in that situation, I would went straight to my boss and be like, hey, I don't know why. This is what happened. Let me know if you need anything else from me, but I'm staying away.
Do you think the boys in the back, as they are sometimes affectionately referred to, do you think they would agree with that? Or is that management level thinking?
I'm sure it's probably going to be split. Because there's always that I don't want to use the term like bro code or anything like that, but
why not?
Because I don't know if I'd consider it like that, but there'd definitely be people like how you were saying would consider that being a snitch move, but I think it'd be a matter of making sure that we get everyone on the same page as quick and as harmlessly as possible. So I'm perfectly fine with the way. I just found it funny how Vince was like, all right, I'll look into it. And that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously he would have no intention and probably wouldn't really.
Well, they read from Flair's book how Vince talked with him.
Right.
But that'd be the extent of what he would say to Bischoff, which makes sense.
Okay, well, thank you for that, for your side. I like that. The chat rolls talking too. They say they believe Eric.
All right.
Kind of overwhelmingly. Although Joseph Boza says he's surprised it took Eric this long to speak up about it openly. That's a great point.
It is a great point.
Because Flair's book came out a long time ago, and Bischoff was so adamant that his account was completely wrong. I guess now he just had the opportunity.
He was busy with TNA.
And that. And that. Well, just a couple little throwaways here at the very end of the episode. He said he had a great relationship with Goldberg at WWE because Goldberg knew he could trust him. That was interesting. They talked a little bit about the triathlon with Austin. Nothing.
I forgot about that one.
Is that just the newsworthy part? Just that it happened?
Yeah.
And it was fun to hear about?
Yeah.
And how kind of some of the things that happened in his first year, in Bischoff's first year in WWE, there were some points where he questioned that first phone call with Vince when Vince said, "Is there anything you won't do?" And he said no.
Yeah.
Apparently he regretted that a little bit throughout that first year. And the Slamboree fight challenge. This is something that Eric Bischoff wants to talk to Vince McMahon about. He said that he heard that Vince wanted to answer this challenge and was talked out of it. I don't buy that for 2 seconds.
Not at all. I don't buy it.
You don't either?
Whatsoever. Vince would have never done it.
No.
Because whether Vince walked out there, Vince could have walked out there and murdered Eric Bischoff in that ring. Bischoff would have won because Vince showed up on a WCW program. It would have never happened. Period.
We can dream. we can dream. Hey, Nathan Rita in the chat. You guys are great today. This was a really fun episode.
I love this episode. I if you couldn't
Controversy
tell,
aside.
if you couldn't tell how much I love this episode.
You did love it.
I loved this episode.
We got to know Rosenberg a little better today.
And it's interesting because I'm really curious about next week's, because he's talking about the AWA, because this was before my time.
Yeah.
So, like, part of me, it's weird. Part of me is like kind of not looking forward to it just because I'm not going to really know. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, this will get an idea of Bischoff's really very first stuff in wrestling and how incredibly terrible the production quality was. It's on the network now. You should see it. It is horrendous.
Yes, the chat roll has already been pointing out to me that I'm going to have to watch the network. Don't worry. The clock's still ticking on my 2 months free that I got from 83 weeks. So
you get.
I'll be watching.
You get that. There's
Are you about to do a network promo right now?
No, I'm just talking about all the things that they promote.
So yes.
Well, they do promote the network, don't they? Well, then they promote. I think it was Stitch Fix was the one that they promoted.
Yeah, what was
that one?
That one came out of nowhere.
I'm not gonna lie. I might look into that one.
They convinced you.
It sounds good. I mean, hey, I have a segment called Christian's Closet, for crying out loud.
That's true.
And of course, Blue Chew. And we had like a 10-minute Blue Chew advertisement this week, which it was a little long than it should have been.
I usually fast forward through it. Am I missing out on anything?
No. That's actually probably the wise thing to do.
I just imagine that it's Conrad saying roll tide," like a bunch of times. And I still don't understand what that means.
No, it's Bischoff talking about his wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to stop fast forwarding through the commercials.
Nah. No,
Maybe not?
You can fast forward it.
I can.
That part,
I might
that part you can fast forward.
I might want to weigh in on it, and it might be something that Bischoff will have to tweet me about again.
Yeah, perhaps. He'll definitely need to talk to you then.
All right. This has been tons of fun. Dude,
Lots of fun.
Tell everybody what you're up to for the next week or so, where to hit you up at, all that fun stuff.
Well, Twitter, @Rosenberg, Instagram, @Rosenberg. You already heard me mention ProWrestlingTees.com/Christian Rosenberg. Huge Black Friday sales happening right now. 20% off everything.
It started already?
It started today on ProWrestlingTees.com. 20% off everything, plus special limited things that are 30% off, a few things that are 40% off, plus other free goodies if you spend X amount of dollars. Great time to buy the shirts. And on top of that, as good of a deal that is, CollarandElbowBrand.com, promo code Rosenberg, during Black Friday weekend, you don't get 10% off when you use the promo code Rosenberg. You get 30% off. And a free t-shirt on top of it.
What?
A free Collar and Elbow brand t-shirt with any order. And then promo code Rosenberg saves 30%. It's insane deals. You have to do it. Make sure you use my promo code, because then they know that I brought you there.
Okay, I will stop waiting for them to give me free stuff, and I will buy it with your promo code.
Hey, there it is. I got one.
Yay! And guys, oh please, you know what? Let's take a moment, since it's Thanksgiving week, to thank all of you out there. We're a new show. We're chugging along, but you guys join us every week. You reach out, you tell me how much you enjoy it, and this is so much fun. This is the highlight of my week, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Oh, this is my least favorite part, because we have to wrap, and I usually just keep talking and talking. All right, I see it on the screen. Let's wrap up. Thank you guys. Have a safe, fun, and happy holiday, and we will see you next week to talk about the AWA. Take care.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.